being a consultant, being a management consultant, how much of the work you are doing or have done over the last year has been related to helping companies with the environment created by the pandemic?
You know, what's interesting is we've seen a couple of different shifts, and I started consulting primarily about 7 years ago. And kind of our thesis around consulting has always been strategy, operational efficiency, and digital transformation through technology. Now, with all of those coming together, that's something that we've practiced over the last 6-7 years as kind of a consultancy group. And so COVID hit in March, and all of the things and all of the practices that we've been sharing with companies accelerated, which is, hey, now you are forced to have to inject some sort of digital transformation because you're no longer sitting next to each other and working. So we're going to need to modernize your tools. Then in terms of operational efficiency, we're going to need to inject and accelerate this move in terms of process and improvement and streamlining communication and making sure that nothing is dropped on the floor while you shift during this time of business. And then strategically, it's always been, okay, we're going to make this tactical change right now, but what happens if this goes on for 8 weeks? What if it goes on for 3 months? What if it goes on for 9 months? And how do you take the changes that you've implemented in the business and strategically place them to where they're going to help your company grow in the long run? And your company is going to continue to adopt those changes. And so we've been preaching this to companies for 5 to 6 years, and COVID just accelerated that. So to your question about, are we working with companies, or how much are we working with companies to help them adapt to the scenario? I'd say it's probably about 90% of what we're doing. And that's just simply because the world has fundamentally changed.
Well, that leads to the question of, what kind of crystal ball did you have 5 years ago that you said, companies really need to move in this direction? I mean, odds are you didn't see a pandemic coming down the line, but what was it about the then current business environment that you said, you know what, this is what we need to prepare people for?
I think in being that we both, you and I have lived in very expensive areas of the United States and country and the world.
Yeah.
And so with that, there was always going to be the ones who can afford it and the ones who can't. And so you're going to have more people look towards a better quality of life over time. And in recognizing that, you're going to see a shift in people's willingness to live elsewhere, move elsewhere, have a better quality of life. And we, things in some of the areas of Silicon Valley and other metropolitan areas are just crazy expensive. So with that, people are going to say, gosh, I can do more with less elsewhere. And so next thing you started to see was the development of tools to allow companies to be able to support that. And then as the people started to move and they started to adopt these tools, the movement accelerated. And so it was, hey, modernize your business, improve what's occurring so you can start to take advantage of all of the talent and where your most talented employees want to work and live. And that's a big piece of it. And then COVID just accelerated just the movement of everybody. Just, hey, I can work from home now, or I'm going to work from home until summer of next year. Gosh, this gives me a chance to go live somewhere else, or go live in an Airbnb for a month or two, or, completely uproot my family and move to another part of the country, or live near our grandparents, or live near our parents, and really develop that sense of community. And so with that, I wouldn't say it was just a crystal ball. It was just the ability to democratize talent anywhere.
Yeah. Did you get pushback on that from the executives, just because when I worked for large corporations in Silicon Valley, the ones that had offices in other states, other countries, et cetera, there was still that kind of messaging, or, be it overt or subvert, that you still wanted to be at headquarters. That is where things are really happening. And if you really wanted to become an integral part of the company, that, they really kind of push that idea. So I'm wondering, when you came along and said, what about being a little bit more flexible as far as location, did you get pushback on that kind of thing?
Definitely. Oh, definitely. I think there was pushback in multiple areas, which wasn't just leadership and the acceleration of one's career, because that is important. Because if you've worked for large, publicly traded companies, a big piece of it is visibility. And you get the visibility by being at headquarters. And by being at headquarters, you have to live a certain location. Mm-hmm. And so that was part of it. But you have this whole level of middle management within companies of people that either independent contributors or middle managers who are working with people in various roles, contractors, consultants, team members of certain areas in space. And so you got to move them to where they're most successful. Now, I think, I think overall companies are still going to carry that we need to be at headquarters feeling. To be able to really accelerate careers and get exposure into different areas of the business. I think that's going to happen simply because there's nothing like being in the same room with people to discuss ideas. Mm-hmm. And, I may be a contrarian to the idea, but I really think being in a work environment very early in your career inside the office with other coworkers and colleagues is extremely important. Mm-hmm. So I do think there will be a return to the office in some capacity. Will it be 3 days on, 2 days off? Will it be the option to be fully remote? Will it be, hey, you can be in the office every day? I think it just depends on, the company, the leadership style, what makes the most sense for the employee. And then also where the employee wants to go with their career. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't see that as contrary. I know how some people might jump on that and say, "Oh, he's contradicting himself." But really, no. I think I see it as just I don't know, kind of a flexible, realistic perspective that you don't have to be all in one camp or the other. There are benefits to both, and I think that is the kind of people you want to work with in terms of setting up your remote situation, rather than someone that's just pushing whole hog for that. It's someone that understands, there's benefits to both sides.
Yeah, and one of the things was there was also a perception before, which is if you worked remotely, that you were just completely disconnected as to what was going on with the business and really knowing what was occurring on a day-to-day basis within the company. Mm-hmm. There was that thought by I wouldn't say a lot of people, but I would say it would be carried by 20 to 30% of people in the workforce that thought if you're remote, you can't possibly do your job as effectively as you could if you were sitting in this cubicle or in this office next door to me.
Yeah.
And that thought those 20, 30% have completely gone away now because we're seeing companies thrive. We're seeing people be successful. We're seeing objectives and goals be met and exceeded. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, there will still be that thought of, hey, unless I see you in the office, I don't know if you're doing that job. And that's a portion of micromanagement to a certain extent, but, different people manage in different ways.
Yeah. And then to stay with Red Beach for just a little bit longer, I just was curious. I mean, there is no shortage of management consulting companies in this world. In fact, in California, I think, there's quite the density of them. What is your edge? What is Red Beach Advisors' special sauce, if you will, that puts them ahead of other people in certain categories?
The difference between us and a lot of other, consulting firms is one, most consulting firms will have a standard methodology in terms of how they do things. And one thing we understand is every business is a snowflake to a certain extent. And there's different solutions for different companies at different stages with different people. And understanding that and not coming in the door saying, hey, this is what I did for company A, and this is what worked for IBM in 1982, and this is what, has worked for Amazon in 2008. Everybody's company is different to some difference in degree. And our focus is going in, unpeeling that, understanding the differences in either the culture, the approach, the products, the services, the people, the leadership structure, and really devising solutions specifically tailored for those companies. And another aspect of us is our transformative, plan in terms of the business. Our goal is to always try to modernize the company with efficiency. And so that's not just saying, hey, a company of your size is utilizing this technology and this is what they're spending and this is going to fit great here and blah, blah, blah. It's really just saying this is the right solution for your company with where you're at and devising process around that to meet the strategic objectives of the company. And so we're utilizing technology as a key piece to move companies forward, but also wrapping around sensible process and procedure to meet strategic goals. So we come in and we want to say, where do you want to have the business go? What are your goals? And then we'll say, where are you at right now and what are you using? And then we'll come in and say, okay, so how are you making all of this work in the business? And then we come back and we say, okay, this is the best way for you to strategically meet your goals through implementing this technology or implementing this process, or maybe you need to change somebody's role within the company or duties. And so really taking a holistic view at all those three pillars to solve and create solutions.
Well, that kind of leads naturally into, in addition to being the founder of Red Beach, you're also the founder and CEO of StartingPoint, a software as a service company. So building on what you were just talking about, how do you kind of have a separation of church and state between those two companies? Because it would seem like if you hire Red Beach, everyone would come in and say, you know what, the answer is StartingPoint. You need to get this software. It seems like that would be, you would just use it as this natural pipeline, but I don't get that vibe from you or the company's literature.
Not in all cases. Ideally, it's really a solution based upon the type of company that you have. Red Beach Advisors is able to work with, we obviously, made kind of our name in the Global 2000, Fortune 500, Fortune 1000 space, so large enterprise companies. StartingPoint is a solution that's focused more towards the S&P mid-market and lower enterprise space. So there's, like I said, there's technology and there's solutions based upon the size of company that you have and also the type of company that you have. Well, StartingPoint is a solution that's focused on customer operations and experience for service-based companies and teams. So we really want to focus on those companies that have high touch, high interaction with their customers and clients. They may have projects and they want to share visibility to those projects. They may receive a lot of back and forth questions from their customers and clients. They may share a lot of files back and forth. They also have different team members that are working on these projects, on these questions, on these service requests or inquiries, on, managing onboarding customers and really simplifying that for them. And so if you're a company that is a product or a consumer goods company, you're a B2C company, you're probably not going to need StartingPoint. However, if you are a B2B company and you're providing a service like you're a financial services company or an accountant or CPA or a consultant or an agency of some sort. Starting Point is a perfect solution for it.
Mm.
You know, and we had that. I had that this morning. I had a company that's providing services for us, and you know, I sent the woman an email like, "Hey, this is something we want to change," and she was like, "Oh, sorry, I missed this." Well, that doesn't happen if you have Starting Point.
Mm.
And that's what we saw.
Okay. Now, in reading about Starting Point, I saw something that I almost, I'm on the verge of not believing. It says nothing takes more than 5 clicks inside the platform, which sounds unbelievable. You know, as a person who has worked with, and I know, you know, you guys don't classify it as CRM software, but as someone who's worked with various, you know, CRM tools, where I think maybe they set a limit on 5,000 clicks within the platform. I'm amazed that you've, you know, because that was always a humongous pet peeve for a lot of people, is just going down that rabbit hole to, you know, get to where you want to go. So, you know, was that the biggest challenge in creating this product? I mean,
that's still a challenge. I think it's a challenge for the platform, which is, you know, my background, and I'm obviously the founder of the company, is focused in Lean and Six Sigma principles. So in being that, I wanted to develop a platform that was aligned with that. So it was, let's reduce waste. Let's reduce actions that are no longer needed. Let's make this as simple and as efficient as possible. And so when we're building it, we're thinking, okay, how many clicks does this take to create an action? How easy is it? How simple is it for people to understand and to use? You know, because like you said, if you have thousands of clicks, that just leads to complexity. Leading to more complex solutions leads to people trying to find ways around doing that process or procedure. What we wanted to do was build a platform that allows people to stick to the process. You know, make sure it's simple, make sure it's efficient, make sure it's quick to use, make sure it's easy for customers. And so it's a solution that actually does stick to 5 clicks. No action takes more than 5, whether it's an administrative function to customize the platform, or whether it's something to where a team member who's using it needs to make changes, or whether you have a customer who's logging into the interface and needs to see, you know, where their service request is, or where their files are stored, or anything like that. 5 clicks maximum.
Yeah, because one of my Bay Area gigs years ago was as a sales operations person, and I was brought in because they had this tool and they wanted the salespeople to enter in all of their information, and theoretically this would, you know, carry all of the sales data and the whole contract through finance, through accounting, et cetera, et cetera. And, you know, it would just be this wonderful streamlined system, but it didn't take into account the reality of the type of people that most salespeople are, and that they want to be out and engaging with their clients, their customers, and they didn't want to be noodling around in a software, you know, all day long. And so, you know, I was basically a human patch to fix that particular system. So, you know, and admittedly, it's while the technology was good, it didn't have an intuitive element. It wasn't, you know, another one of these technologies like, are you sure this was just designed by a human? Because I don't think anyone can necessarily intuitive what they're supposed to do here. So that begs the question, how do you design a tool like Starting Point and still kind of keep the humanity in it?
Well, Starting Point was born out of Red Beach Advisors.
Right.
And so since it's a tool that was kind of incubated in Red Beach Advisors, it was like, okay, how do we build this so we actually really want to use the tool? And so if we stick to the premise of having our customers dictate what they want in it and how it functions, and then we add kind of the making sure that it's efficient and simple to use, that allows us to stick to our premise of keeping it simple and efficient. And that we don't want there to be, when a customer will come to us and say, hey, we want the tool to do this, 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 and this. And then I'll say, okay, but why would you do step 2 and 3 when you can easily go from step 1 to 4 and it can be a 2-step process? You know, and so our team of designers and engineers are focused on really taking the process and finding out the best ways to implement that in the system to make it as easy as possible. And so with that makes it easier. So instead of having to have a lot of different clicks, you now can have a simple platform that allows you to remove all of the excess steps. And our customers seem to, our customers see the value in that, which is, we want to, and to your point of salespeople, and the starting point isn't necessarily for salespeople, but what you want is you want the ability for your team to execute. And executing and supporting more and more of your customers and clients is focused on how quickly they can get to those actions. Not necessarily, oh, I worked with these 2 clients today because I had to spend an hour on each one inside of the platform to update their information. No, I need to be able to support 10 customers within an hour inside of the platform. It's possible. And that is the key.
And then I was watching this other interview that you did recently, and in talking about building up StartingPoint, you said when you work for an early stage tech company, you are always selling, no matter what the role or your position in that company, which I get, but I think it's not something that everyone would necessarily gravitate toward on their own. So how do you get non-salespeople to embrace that idea?
It's really less of an idea of selling, because some people are just inherently scared of sales.
Yeah.
It's just what they don't, it's just not in their nature. And, as a person who came from a IT background, who was a system and network administrator, the back office guy, I didn't have to sell. And then throughout my career, I kept picking up more and more skills, talking to more and more customers, clients, prospects, potential targets, and learning from other people who had great skills in sales. But if you change the veil of it from not necessarily saying, hey, I need you to sell, but also just talk about what you're working on in a positive light. That's selling in itself, which is, you don't necessarily, if you're an engineer in an early stage company and somebody asks you, oh, what does your company do? And you talk about it in a positive light, that is a form of sales, because you're then raising more interest of the person you're talking to about what you're working on. But you're not necessarily coming to them and saying, hey, our pricing is this, and we offer this free trial, and, I can get you set up on the platform and connected for, within a day or two. It's not that. It's more of a, hey, I'm working on a StartingPoint, and StartingPoint is a, customer operations and experience platform, and it's built to help professional service-based companies solves their challenges in terms of customer experience. You use a bunch of different tools to support your one client. How about you use one platform to do it that's easy to manage? And that's what we do. And then next, just that phrase, and you're talking about it in a positive light, in a positive tone, gets people interested and says, oh, what's the website? Or, hey, I'd like to take a look at it. And that's a form of sales. And so if you have everybody in the organization understand the culture of just talk about what you're working on and understand what you're working on and share it with people, then you're always selling.
Yeah. No, and as a coincidence, just the other day I was listening to some podcast and they mentioned how Tesla, the car company, has never done any advertising. And it didn't really dawn on me until the person said it. But it fits in with what you're saying in that in many respects, every Tesla customer is like part of their sales or advertising arm because they will talk it up, even if you didn't ask, they will, say, oh my God, you should see what this car can do or what this is. And yeah. And so I never thought that's an interesting perspective because you wouldn't think of that as selling, but really it is kind of selling in the big umbrella picture.
It's a different form of it.
Yeah.
And really, there's a lot of companies that have been able to, be able to amass huge customer bases and provide amazing solutions because the product is fantastic and the product does what it needs to do. And then you have people who are using the product who are like, hey, this is fantastic. I need to share this with somebody else. And then they share it with somebody else and then it goes from there. And that's to the effect of Tesla, which is, hey, I've got this nice car. It looks cool. It works well. It's energy efficient. And, you're obviously get some tax credits and things like that. Then people are like, oh, let me take a look and check it out. And then the buzz starts to happen. So there's a viral effect to that. But really for SaaS solutions in this space, it's all about driving value. And that goes back to Tesla's, the example of Tesla. It drives value for customers. And if your product drives value and people like it and enjoy it, more people will start to adopt it or at least investigate what it's doing and how it's doing it. And so if you build a good product, you don't necessarily have to spend as much in sales and marketing and advertising. If you don't build as great a product, you've got to tell more and more people as to why your product is great, and you've got to sell them more.
That's a great summary. Yeah. And then I understand how the creation of Starting Point, number one, was years in the making, and number two, kind of evolved out of your work as a consultant. The work you did with Red Beach Advisors, it seemed to drive your understanding of the need for something like Starting Point. What I'm curious about, though, is now that Starting Point has been, going for over a year and such, is how has working on Starting Point started to influence your work with Red Beach?
I'd say, we started Starting Point was kind of birthed on a notepad about 2 years ago. We started developing it a year ago. We took it to market end of May of this year, so probably June 1, May 31st, June 1.
Okay.
And so, being 6 months in, how has it influenced, Red Beach Advisors? I would say for companies that are smaller to medium size in that space that need assistance, we definitely are using that as a solution for those companies, who can see that they're using it. So it's a tool that's in our tool bag of solutions that we provide to companies. So, we're always thinking about technology solutions that can work for our customers and clients and to modernize them and get them up to speed and make it easier for them to use. And really, we do get a handful of customers that are non-technical. And Starting Point is a tool that's built for non-technical business leaders to be able to use. If you're technical, you can use it. But if you're non-technical, it's easy enough to use as well. And so this is just another tool that's in the tool bag for us. And it allows us to go to our customers on the consulting side and say, hey, is this something that would work a little bit easier for you instead of utilizing these expensive solutions or 5 to 7 different lower end solutions? How about you just use one that fits your budget, that solves problems for your team, that creates efficiency, that makes things easier to do inside of your business?
Okay. All right. And, you've been, you've worked for, a number of companies and, created this, your own. What I'm also wondering is what What have you learned from your experiences with Starting Point that, amazingly you didn't learn with any of your previous jobs?
Oh gosh. Yeah, building a software as a service company is very different than a professional services firm. Say that off the beginning. They're very, very different. Usually a professional services firm, you can go out and you can just fire up a logo, fire up a website, and really start talking to people about their challenges and their problems and how you can help them. Okay. When you're building a software solution, you really have to focus on the value you're driving. Like if I'm an accountant and I'm going out and I'm saying, hey, I'm starting my own accountancy firm, all I really have to do is go out and start talking to more people who use accountants. And I can find one that's not happy with their current accountant and try to convince them that I'm the one that can help them. Okay. So then from there, with a software platform, you've really got to focus on two things: saving money and saving time. And how you do that and driving that message through. Because if you're a professional services company, I'm going to save you time per se, but I'm going to cost you more money.
Yeah.
But software is one of those items to where you really got to figure out, how do you do both for a company? How do you save time and how do you save money? Those are the drivers. One other thing we've learned is sales cycles are very different. Like you can come in and you can think, oh, I'll just fire up and my sales cycle can be 3 to 7 days and people will immediately see the value of it and go from there. And it takes a bit longer to make that decision within companies. And so our sales cycle started out to where we thought, hey, our solution's fantastic. It's easy to use. People should gravitate right to it. And, hey, it'll be 15, 30 days. It's really shift to a 30, 60-day evaluation period, for our company, which is, important in terms of the forecast of building the business.
Yeah.
Other things is, while messaging was also a big thing for us. And how I share that is, we launched the product, end of May. We had one message that was very different than what we're sharing right now. It was based upon our MVP, or minimum viable product, that we released. So that messaging was focused on that driver. And we went out and said, let's go with this messaging. Let's do a digital marketing campaign. Let's run some ads. Let's kind of see what the feedback was. And our messaging was wrong. That's the best way I can put it. It wasn't working. It didn't work. And so it didn't work. Stop that. And so then go back and start to, as the product continued to evolve, start to talk to more and more of our potential customers and clients, and really just have conversations with people and just say, hey, this is what we're working to solve. What would you call this? And our customers and clients and prospects came back and said, yeah, we have a disconnected customer experience that goes on inside of our business right now. And we want to solve that. And we think your tool can solve that for us. And that's how we circled back with Starting Point solves the disconnected customer experience.
And it also shows an amazing amount of humility, because so often, especially in software, or actually even hardware, any kind of item, it's people that are just barreling down at you with, this is why this is the best and this is why you need it. And so, yeah, it's kind of a fascinating idea that you just stopped and said, all right, it's still good. The product is still good, but we need to listen to other people about why they like it instead of telling them.
Yeah. to your point of humility, and I'll get to that in a second. But it's a, one of our my mentors or people I talked about going through this process of building a software company is, listen to everything that's going on. Listen to either your competitors, listen to other mentors, how other people view your product, how your customers and clients view it, most importantly, how when you're doing demos, what the feedback, what type of facial expressions, what captures people's, attention, and find out what that is so you can really drive that home.
Mm.
And so we went through a process of thinking, hey, this is what we think is, the problem. And we knew what the problem was because before we launched, we interviewed 150 different companies that had the problem. But they all came back with different ways of expressing the problem.
Mm.
And so then coming forward, we launched with messaging that was wrong. And we needed to come back and find out, how could we take all of that feedback we got from these 150 companies we talked to, plus these additional 100 we've talked to since we've launched, and bring all of their messaging into one simple message that they all can agree upon. That was a massive challenge for us. It took us 4 months.
Wow.
It's not something that's simple. It's just, it took those words. And so to circle back to humility, is starting a startup is one of the most challenging things that I personally have gone through from a professional point of view. And I say that is because it exposes almost all of your weaknesses in terms of being able to actually build a business.
Mm.
Because people, like you said, people build a company, they build a software, and they say, this is the problem, this is why you need to buy it, this is why we're better, this is, without really listening as to what's out there.
Mm.
And so you as a founder have a vision as to what's out there and what's going on and why your solution is great. But sometimes you don't hear everybody else that's out there and what's going on. And so sometimes you can be wrong. And you can be right and be wrong at the same time. And you can be wrong and right. So it's it's a consistent challenge. It's a consistent struggle. It's something that forces you to be vulnerable.
Mm.
And the best founders that I've seen are those that are willing to accept criticism, accept feedback, accept differences in opinion, changes in your business model, changes in your messaging, changes in your pricing, changes in possibly how you're structuring your product. And all of those things are difficult, especially for people who have been leaders, because we think if we have 20 years of experience, we know it all.
Mm.
And you really have to accept that you don't. And continuous learning is a part of that. And by being, humble and understanding that you're always learning will help you get further ahead faster.
Hmm. Wow. No, that's that. Yeah, I'm going to be thinking about that one for a long time. All right. Well, that takes care of all of my questions. I know you've been doing, a bunch of interviews and stuff, and I'm curious, is there anything that people do not ask you that you want to talk about? Like people always ask me about A, B, and C, but what I really want to talk about is X.
No, I think, the one thing we've seen with companies out there, and we went through it ourselves, and this is with Red Beach Advisors and StartingPoint, is, a lot of people think they have to, think it's tough to find a solution that's out there. And so they always revert back to just the standard way of how to solve problems or what they've always done. And I think companies and business owners really need to evaluate getting out of that method of saying, this is how things have always been done. And that needed to happen prior to COVID, and it definitely needs to happen post-COVID.
Mm.
which is companies really need to evaluate, we've always done it this way. Do we like it? No, but this is how we've always done it.
Yeah.
And find ways to find solutions, and that's really how you start to create efficiency in your business and grow your company effectively, which is, if you've always said, hey, I've always run this ad in this newspaper for my company. Every month I'm paying this bill. Is it really yielding the results that you really want as a business owner? Or I've been using this software, and does the software work? I guess. Could it be better? Yes. Okay, we'll find a solution to what needs to be better. And really take that into account for your business, for your processes, for your team members, for your employees, and for your customers. And obviously for us within StartingPoint, we're focused on improving the customer experience. Because if you improve the customer experience, the customer is going to be more loyal to you and stick with your services.
And I think a lot of people, because I've come across that, in many a business where they get to that point, like, well, this isn't really meeting our needs, but it's what we've always had, and we have all these workarounds. And I think that the big hurdle there is to go out and look for a different solution, create a different solution, as you're realizing you're starting a whole new uphill climb. And I think a lot of people don't necessarily have the energy or the motivation to take that step necessarily.
Yeah, but the challenge with that, and when people run into that challenge, is their competitors are. And if you're not willing to make the change, then your competitors are, and they're quicker to the change, and they take your customers from you. And so, innovation is always key to growth. And without that innovation, the company's not going to grow. It's eventually going to continue to decrease and decrease and decrease. So, company and business owners have to, get hip to the fact that things change. Innovation is almost required and mandatory for growth. And if you accept that, then you start to look and develop solutions that can help you and your company move forward.